Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today's story is not an easy one to tell. Hollywood has always sparkled with fame, glamour, and dreams. Yet behind that bright curtain lies a darker truth. Some of its brightest stars vanished without warning, taken by something as silent and deadly as a blood clot. In today's video, we will look back at 15 actors whose final moments came suddenly, tragically, and far too soon. Do you remember any of these stars? Leave a comment sharing your memory of the first one that comes to your mind. Your stories keep their spirits alive. Blood clots do not announce themselves. They strike quietly, without mercy, and when they do, even the strongest lights of Hollywood can be extinguished in an instant. And nowhere was this tragedy more shocking than in the heartbreaking final hours of Brittany Murphy, a star who seemed destined for a lifetime of success. Brittany Murphy, 1977 to 2009. Her final morning began like any other, and yet within hours, the world would be staring at headlines they could not believe. On December 20th, 2009, Brittany Murphy collapsed inside her Los Angeles home. Paramedics raced against time, but the young actress was unresponsive. By midday, the news broke. Brittany Murphy, only 32, had died. For many, it felt impossible. How could someone so full of life leave so suddenly? The autopsy would later reveal a storm inside her body. Severe pneumonia, dangerous anemia, and physiological stress that allowed fluid buildup and blood pooling in her lungs, the kind of internal chaos that can lead to deadly clot formation. It was a quiet killer, hidden beneath the surface, giving her no warning, no chance to fight back. But Brittany Murphy was more than her tragic end. Born in 1977, she rose from child performer to one of Hollywood's most beloved young actresses. Audiences adored her in Clueless, Uptown Girls, Girl Interrupted, and countless other films where she radiated warmth, humor, and vulnerability. She was the kind of performer who could make an audience smile with one line and cry with the next. Her talent was unmistakable, and her future seemed limitless. The shockwaves after her death were immediate. Fans gathered outside her home. Fellow actors spoke with disbelief. And the most haunting part? Her husband, Simon Monjack, would die just months later under eerily similar circumstances, deepening the mystery and leaving Hollywood with more questions than answers. Do you remember the first Brittany Murphy film you ever watched? What moment of her stayed with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And as tragic as her story was, she wasn't the only beloved star taken by a silent clot. Our next case reveals another heartbreaking truth, that even in the hands of skilled surgeons, fate can still strike without mercy. Bill Paxton, 1955-2017. The morning he walked into the hospital, no one imagined it would be the last time Bill Paxton would ever greet the world with that warm, unmistakable smile. It was a routine heart procedure, something dozens of people undergo every single day. He joked with nurses, talked about future film projects, and looked forward to going home. Yet just days later, on February 25, 2017, Hollywood received the kind of news that freezes time. Bill Paxton was gone. The cause? A post-surgical blood clot that triggered a fatal stroke. It was the kind of tragedy that feels especially cruel because it came not from an accident, not from a dangerous stunt, but from the very process meant to save his life. A clot formed after surgery, traveled to his brain, and within moments, everything changed. For his family, for his colleagues, and for millions of fans, it felt like a shockwave. Born in 1955 in Fort Worth, Texas, Paxton spent decades building one of the most versatile careers in Hollywood. From Twister to Apollo 13, from Titanic to Aliens, he was the rare actor who could play a hero, a villain, or the everyday man caught in extraordinary chaos. His roles were memorable not because they were loud, but because they were honest. He had a gift for grounding even the wildest stories in something real. When he died, tributes flooded social media. Directors who had worked with him praised his kindness. Co-stars described him as the beating heart on every set. Even fans who had never met him felt the loss deeply. Bill Paxton was the kind of actor you trusted the moment he appeared on screen. His sudden passing also sparked public conversation about surgical risks, pushing many to reevaluate the hidden dangers of blood clots. It became a reminder that even the strongest men, even those who seemed invincible on screen, are vulnerable in ways we never expect. John Ritter, 1948-2003. It happened on a night that should have been ordinary. John Ritter was on set, rehearsing for his television sitcom, surrounded by laughter, crew members, and the familiar buzz of studio lights. Then, without warning, he clutched his chest and collapsed. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital across the street, but even they could not fathom how quickly the situation would unravel. Within hours, the world learned the truth. John Ritter had died of an aortic dissection, a violent tearing inside the body that triggers catastrophic internal bleeding and the rapid formation of blood clots. He was only 54. One moment, he was performing, bringing joy to millions, and the next, he was gone. Hollywood froze in disbelief. How could someone so energetic, so full of life, slip away so suddenly? John Ritter was born in 1948 in Burbank, California, and for decades he was America's beloved comedic everyman. His iconic role in Three's Company made him a household name, and his talent extended far beyond comedy. He could play warm, vulnerable characters, and he could shift into dramatic roles with remarkable grace. His charm was effortless, and audiences saw him not just as an actor, but as a friend they welcomed into their homes every week. The shock of his death reverberated across the entertainment world. Fans left flowers outside the studio. Fellow comedians mourned the loss of a man they described as gentle, generous, and endlessly supportive. It was one of those rare moments when Hollywood collectively stopped and grieved not just a performer, but a spirit who had left an imprint on everyone he touched. Aortic dissections are often called the great imitators because they hide behind symptoms that resemble less serious conditions. Ritter's case brought national attention to the importance of early detection, changing medical protocols across the industry. Garry Shandling, 1949-2016. He was at home, speaking on the phone, sounding calm, present, and very much himself. Then, in an instant so swift it left no time for goodbyes, Garry Shandling collapsed to the floor. Friends rushed to call emergency services, but by the time paramedics arrived, the legendary comedian had no pulse. Later, the medical examiner confirmed what few could believe. A sudden pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs, had ended his life without warning. It was the kind of death people fear precisely because it gives no signal. No build-up, no final message, no second chance. One moment he was making plans for the weekend, and the next, the world had lost one of its most influential comedic voices. Born in Phoenix in 1949, Garry Shandling changed comedy forever. His groundbreaking series, The Larry Sanders Show, was more than entertainment. It reshaped how Hollywood saw itself. The mockumentary style, the raw backstage humor, the unfiltered satire, these elements inspired generations of comedians and writers. Shandling's brilliance was subtle, quiet, and razor-sharp. He never tried to overpower you with jokes. Instead, he invited you to lean in, to think, to feel the truth beneath the laughter. When news of his passing spread, Hollywood reacted with unusual sincerity. Comedians who rarely expressed emotion publicly broke down on air. Actors spoke of him as a mentor whose kindness matched his genius. There was shock, of course, but also a deep sense of absence, the kind that comes when a guiding light suddenly goes out. Pulmonary embolisms are silent predators, forming from blood clots that travel unnoticed through the body until they reach the lungs and stop everything. Shandling's death became another stark reminder of how fragile life is, even for those who seem larger than it. Tommy Lister Jr., 1958-2020. His presence was enormous, unmistakable, and unforgettable. Yet when Tommy Lister Jr. was found unresponsive inside his California apartment on December 10, 2020, the silence felt deafening. Friends had grown worried. He had been struggling to breathe in recent days, but no one expected the truth to come so suddenly. When paramedics arrived, they could not revive him. The medical examiner's report later confirmed the cause: a pulmonary embolism, a deadly blood clot blocking the arteries of his lungs. It was a tragic ending for a man whose on-screen characters were larger than life. Tommy Lister Jr., born in 1958, towered over Hollywood with his 6'5" frame and magnetic intensity. Audiences knew him as Debo from Friday, the neighborhood menace whose glare alone could freeze a room. But behind the intimidating roles was a gentle, humorous, deeply spiritual man who loved connecting with fans. Lister's career spanned wrestling, action films, sci-fi epics, comedies, and everything in between. From The Fifth Element to The Dark Knight, he brought a unique presence that made even small roles memorable. People didn't just watch him, they felt him. His passing shook the entertainment world. Co-stars who once feared his on-screen persona now mourned the loss of a friend known for enormous kindness. Social media filled with memories, tributes, and stories of chance encounters where Lister made strangers feel seen, valued, and uplifted. Pulmonary embolisms leave no time for goodbyes. They strike suddenly, stopping the heart from receiving oxygen. And in Lister's case, the battle was over before anyone realized it had begun. There was no final scene, no dramatic buildup. Just a quiet, heartbreaking end for a man who spent his life creating unforgettable moments. Robin Gibb, 1949-2012. His voice once floated across the world, delicate and soulful, shaping the sound of an entire era. Yet in the spring of 2012, Robin Gibb lay in a London hospital bed fighting for every breath. After months of battling illness, he faced a sudden and devastating complication: a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot lodged in his lung, stopping the fragile progress he had made. On May 20th, the news broke. The legendary Bee Gees singer had passed away at 62. His decline had been a painful roller coaster. At moments, he seemed to recover, giving fans hope that the unmistakable vibrato that defined the disco generation would rise again. But blood clots move in silence, striking without warning. And when the embolism hit, even the strongest medical team could not reverse it. For many, it felt unfair, a brutal twist in a story already marked by struggle. Robin Gibb, born in 1949 on the Isle of Man, rose to international superstardom alongside his brothers Barry and Maurice. Together, the Bee Gees crafted songs that became the heartbeat of the 1970s. How Deep Is Your Love, Stayin' Alive, and Night Fever weren't just hits, they were cultural landmarks. Yet beyond the glittering spotlight, Robin possessed a gentle, introspective spirit that made him beloved by colleagues and fans alike. When he died, tributes poured in from musicians across generations. Some credited him with reinventing pop. Others described his voice as a fragile instrument that somehow held the whole world together. Fans left flowers outside the Gibb family home. Radio stations dedicated entire hours to his memory. It was not just the loss of a singer, it was the closing of a chapter in music history. Blood clots often form quietly after surgeries or long periods of illness, and in Robin's case, they delivered the final blow in a fight he had waged with profound resilience. The tragedy served as another reminder of how unpredictable and merciless these conditions can be. Christopher Pettiott, 1976 to 2000, 400 words. He was only 24, an age meant for dreams, momentum, and the beginning of a long career. Instead, on April 12, 2000, Christopher Pettiott collapsed suddenly, leaving friends and paramedics scrambling for answers. Despite attempts to revive him, he never regained consciousness. When the medical examiner released the findings, the truth stunned everyone. His death resulted from organ failure, compounded by the formation of blood clots that ravaged his system far too quickly for help to arrive. It felt impossible. How could someone so young, so full of promise, be gone in a breath? Born in 1976 in Texas, Christopher rose to fame as a child actor before transitioning into teenage and young adult roles. Audiences remember him from the cult classic Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, where his charm and comedic timing made him a standout. He also appeared in films like Point Break and television shows that hinted at a bright future ahead. But Hollywood can be a difficult place for young performers, and despite his talent, Christopher struggled to find the breakthrough role that would anchor his adult career. Even so, those who knew him described a gentle soul, a hard-working young man fighting to rebuild momentum. His unexpected collapse left family and friends shattered, clinging to memories of his warm personality and the potential he carried. News of his death rippled quietly through the entertainment industry. He wasn't a superstar, but he was the kind of actor people rooted for. The kind whose best work felt still ahead of him. Fans who grew up watching him were heartbroken, realizing that the boy they remembered from childhood movies would never get the chance to grow into the roles many believed he was destined for. Blood clots can form under extreme physical stress, illness, or bodily imbalance, and in Pettiot's case, they led to a cascade of internal failures that could not be stopped. His death became a sobering reminder that tragedy does not discriminate. Lisa Sheridan, 1974-2019. The call came on a quiet February morning. Lisa Sheridan, a familiar face to television audiences, had been found unresponsive in her New Orleans apartment. Friends and colleagues hoped it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, anything but the truth. But when authorities arrived, the reality became heartbreakingly clear. She was gone at just 44. The coroner's report later revealed the cause: complications from chronic illness, including a blood clot that had formed in her heart, a silent obstruction that ended her life before help could reach her. There were no dramatic final scenes, no public struggle, no warning. Only a sudden stillness that left those who knew her grasping for answers. Born in 1974 in Macon, Georgia, Lisa carved out a steady career that many actors envied. She appeared in dozens of beloved television series, from CSI to Invasion to Halt and Catch Fire. Though rarely the headline star, she possessed a soft power, a grounded intensity that made every role feel real. Casting directors loved her professionalism. Fellow actors admired her warmth. Fans appreciated her authenticity in every performance. Her passing sent waves through the acting community. Longtime collaborators shared emotional tributes, describing her as kind, thoughtful, and deeply committed to her craft. Some remembered her infectious laugh. Others spoke of quiet moments between takes when she lifted the spirits of everyone around her. Hollywood loses many famous names each year, but Lisa's death struck differently because she embodied the hard-working, resilient backbone of the industry. Blood clots in the heart are particularly devastating. They can cut off circulation in seconds, leaving no opportunity for intervention. In Lisa's case, the clot became the final, tragic chapter in a life marked by determination and creativity. Ron Lester, 1970 to 2016. In June of 2016, Ron Lester lay in a hospital room surrounded by machines, fighting a battle that few outside his inner circle fully understood. For years, he had struggled with severe health complications, but in his final days, the danger escalated rapidly. Multiple infections, organ failure, and the silent formation of blood clots pushed his body to the brink. On June 17th, he passed away at just 45, leaving behind a legacy far more complex and human than the comedic roles that first made him famous. Ron Lester, born in 1970 in Kennesaw, Georgia, became a breakout name in the late 1990s. His unforgettable performances Billy Bob in Varsity Blues made audiences laugh, cheer, and cry all at once. He brought heart to roles that could have been one-dimensional, transforming the big guy teammate archetype into someone vulnerable and deeply lovable. Fans saw themselves in him, imperfect, emotional, and trying their best. But Ron's off-screen life was filled with challenges. He underwent a series of intense medical procedures that drastically changed his appearance and his health. Complications from gastrointestinal surgeries left him weakened, and as his condition worsened, blood clots began forming inside his compromised system. For many, it was devastating to watch a man who once lit up the screen with so much energy now struggle to stay alive. Hollywood mourned him quietly but sincerely. Co-stars from Varsity Blues shared heartfelt tributes, recalling the warmth he brought to every set. Fans posted memories of the first time they saw him on screen, how he made them laugh so hard, or how he delivered that one emotional moment they never forgot. Even those who had not followed his later career felt the sting of losing someone who had once felt like a friend. Blood clots often strike hardest when the body is already under severe stress. In Ron's case, they compounded every existing complication, turning a long medical struggle into a final, irreversible decline. Michael Clarke Duncan, 1957-2012. For weeks, fans prayed for good news. Michael Clarke Duncan, the towering, gentle actor whose presence could fill a room with warmth, lay in a Los Angeles hospital fighting to recover from a massive heart attack. At first, it seemed possible. Doctors were cautiously hopeful. Friends visited. His longtime partner stayed by his side every hour. But what no one could see was the silent danger forming within his weakened body. Blood clots began developing, tightening their hold on his already fragile heart and lungs. And on September 3, 2012, the world learned that Michael Clarke Duncan had passed away at just 54. For many, the news felt like losing a guardian spirit. Born in 1957 in Chicago, Duncan's rise to fame was anything but conventional. He worked as a bodyguard, dug ditches, and took odd jobs before Hollywood finally noticed the powerful tenderness he brought to every scene. His performance as John Coffey in The Green Mile remains one of the most beloved in modern film history, a role that earned him an Academy Award nomination and an enduring place in the hearts of moviegoers everywhere. On screen, he looked indestructible. Off-screen, he was known for kindness, patience, and a generosity of soul that few possess. Co-stars spoke of him as a giant with the gentlest heart, a man who lifted everyone who crossed his path. His deep, resonant voice became his signature, yet it was his sincerity that people remembered most. His death sparked an outpouring of grief across Hollywood. Directors, actors, and fans shared stories of how Duncan treated everyone with equal respect, whether they were a studio executive or a production assistant. Candlelight vigils were held. Online tributes flooded timelines. It was clear that his impact extended far beyond the characters he played. Blood clots often develop after major cardiac events, and for Duncan, they became a hidden threat that no one could stop. Despite weeks of care, the silent buildup proved too powerful. Bernie Mac, 1957-2008. The world knew him for his booming voice, his razor-sharp wit, and the unmistakable swagger that made every Bernie Mac performance feel electric. But in the summer of 2008, behind closed hospital doors in Chicago, the comedian was fighting a battle no punchline could soften. What began as a severe infection quickly escalated. His lungs struggled to keep up, inflammation surged, and soon blood clots formed deep within his respiratory system. These silent killers compounded the damage, squeezing the life out of a man who once commanded every stage he stepped on. On August 9th, he died at just 50 years old. The news stunned millions. Bernie Mac had seemed unstoppable, a force of nature whose laughter alone could change the mood of a room. No one imagined that something as microscopic and silent as a clot could bring his powerful voice to silence. Born Bernard Jeffrey McCullough in 1957, he rose from the south side of Chicago with a confidence that felt carved from steel. His stand-up routines were legendary. His sitcom, The Bernie Mac Show, redefined family comedy with its honesty and heart. He was fearless, driven, and wildly original, one of the kings of comedy not just by title, but by destiny. Colleagues mourned him deeply. Steve Harvey, Cedric the Entertainer, and countless others spoke of his generosity, his discipline, and the way he treated every cast and crew member with respect. Fans filled forums with memories of jokes that helped them through dark times. Churches, comedy clubs, and neighborhoods honored him with tributes that lasted for days. The tragedy of his death lay not only in its suddenness, but in how preventable it felt. Blood clots often develop when the body is overwhelmed by infection or inflammation, and in Bernie Mac's case, the combination proved catastrophic. There were no final performances, no grand farewell, just a sudden, heartbreaking absence where a legend once stood. Richard Biggs, 1960-2004. It happened in the span of a single morning. Richard Biggs, best known for his steady, commanding presence on Babylon 5, was preparing for a day of work when he suddenly collapsed. There was no warning, no buildup, no sign that his body was moments away from catastrophe. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but the internal damage had already begun. Doctors discovered the terrifying truth: an aortic dissection. A tear in the body's largest artery had triggered massive internal bleeding and the rapid formation of blood clots. The combination was fatal. He was gone at only 44. To fans and colleagues, the news felt unreal. Richard Biggs was young, disciplined, and seemingly healthy. How could someone who had built a career on strength and stability disappear so suddenly? Born in 1960 in Columbus, Ohio, Biggs became a beloved actor both on stage and screen. Though widely recognized for playing Dr. Stephen Franklin on Babylon 5, he had also built a strong career in soap operas, including a long run on Days of Our Lives. Whether delivering lines in a sci-fi epic or playing out emotional storylines on daytime television, he carried a presence that commanded attention without ever feeling loud or forced. He was a professional's professional, reliable, thoughtful, and deeply committed to his craft. His death devastated the Babylon 5 community. Cast members spoke about how much he meant to them, recalling his humor, discipline, and kindness on set. Fans expressed their shock at losing yet another member of the series far too young. For many, it felt as though a piece of their own history had vanished. Aortic dissections are among the most silent killers in medicine. They mimic harmless symptoms: back pain, fatigue, dizziness. But inside the body, blood clots form rapidly as the artery tears, disrupting circulation and overwhelming the heart. By the time symptoms become severe, it is often too late. John Candy, 1950-1994. In the early hours of March 4, 1994, John Candy was found lifeless in his room while filming in Durango, Mexico. The world awoke to a shock it was not prepared for. The beloved comedic actor, the man whose warmth, humor, and humanity seemed to flow straight through the screen, had died suddenly at only 43. The official cause was a heart attack, but the underlying culprit was far more silent: arterial blood clots that had built up inside his heart over time, eventually triggering the fatal event that ended his life. It felt impossible. How could someone who brought so much joy be taken in such a devastating and lonely moment? Born in 1950 in Toronto, John Candy became one of the greatest comedic actors of his generation. He was the beating heart of classics like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Uncle Buck, Cool Runnings, and countless sketches from his early days with SCTV. He had a rare gift: the ability to make people laugh while simultaneously touching something deeper, something tender. His characters were rarely just funny. They were human, vulnerable, lovable. When news of his passing broke, Hollywood grieved loudly. Fellow comedians spoke of him not only as a genius of humor, but as a man of extraordinary kindness. Directors recalled how he lifted every set he stepped onto. Fans shared stories of how his films helped them through difficult times or reminded them of family members they once cherished. The sense of loss wasn't just about an actor. It was about a person who made the world feel a little gentler. Blood clots in the coronary arteries can remain hidden for years, slowly narrowing passages until the heart can no longer endure the strain. For Candy, the combination of stress, workload, and underlying health issues formed a perfect storm, one that ended in a tragic instant far from home.
James Gandolfini, 1961-2013. On a warm June evening in Rome, James Gandolfini was enjoying a quiet vacation with his son. Hours earlier, witnesses had seen him laughing, dining, and taking in the historic beauty of the city. Nothing suggested danger. Nothing hinted that fate was only moments away. But inside his body, a silent threat had already taken shape. That night, Gandolfini collapsed in his hotel bathroom. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but the damage was irreversible. The beloved star of The Sopranos had suffered a fatal heart attack, triggered, as the autopsy revealed, by a deadly coronary blood clot. He was only 51. The news shattered Hollywood. Fans felt as though they had lost a family member. To millions, Gandolfini wasn't just Tony Soprano. He was the complex face of a new era in television, the anti-hero who changed what storytelling could be. Born in 1961 in Westwood, New Jersey, Gandolfini did not become an overnight success. He worked his way through stage roles, small film parts, and supporting characters until the world finally recognized the raw volcanic power of his acting. As Tony Soprano, he was intimidating yet vulnerable, violent yet heartbreakingly human. The role earned him multiple Emmy Awards and cemented his place among the greatest television actors of all time. His death sent shockwaves across both the entertainment industry and the global fan base. Tributes appeared everywhere, from major networks to small social media pages. Co-stars spoke of his deep generosity, his surprising shyness, and his fierce loyalty to friends and family. Directors recalled how he poured his soul into every scene. Even chefs and hotel staff who encountered him in Rome described him as kind and humble during his final hours. Coronary blood clots are treacherous. They can form quietly, blocking the arteries that feed the heart until circulation stops altogether. In Gandolfini's case, the attack was sudden, severe, and devastatingly final.
Tupac Shakur, 1971 to 1996. The neon lights of Las Vegas burned brightly on the night of September 7, 1996. Music pulsed through the streets, crowds cheered outside the MGM Grand, and Tupac Shakur, one of the most influential voices in hip-hop history, moved through the city surrounded by friends and security. Moments later, everything changed. A white Cadillac pulled alongside his vehicle and gunfire erupted. Tupac was struck multiple times. He was rushed to the hospital where doctors fought desperately to save him. For 6 days, he lay in critical condition. Machines breathed for him, surgeons worked tirelessly. But behind the scenes, another fatal danger had already begun. Blood clots forming in the wake of traumatic injuries and emergency surgeries. These clots, combined with respiratory failure and internal bleeding, created a cascade of complications no medical team could stop. On September 13th, Tupac Shakur died at just 25. His death didn't just shake the entertainment world. It became a global cultural rupture. Tupac was more than a rapper. He was a poet, a philosopher, a provocateur, and a symbol of truth for millions. Born in 1971 in East Harlem, he rose from hardship with a fury and brilliance that few artists ever achieve. His albums defined an era. His words carried the weight of lived experience, injustice, hope, anger, and vision. Even today, decades later, his lyrics continue to guide, challenge, and inspire. When the announcement of his death hit the airwaves, grief poured out across continents. Candlelight vigils appeared in cities worldwide. Fans recited his verses in the streets. Fellow artists mourned not just a colleague, but a revolutionary figure whose voice was silenced far too soon. And the tragedy deepened knowing that his battle in the hospital had been made even more complicated by the silent formation of blood clots that ultimately contributed to his decline. Blood clots after traumatic injuries are notoriously deadly. They can form quickly, travel unpredictably, and turn even the strongest body into a fragile vessel. Tupac's case remains one of the most devastating examples of how violence can set off a chain of internal failures that medicine cannot always reverse.
Each of these 15 stories reminds us of a truth we often avoid. Life can change in a single heartbeat. Blood clots, silent, invisible, merciless, claimed actors who made us laugh, cry, dream, and feel less alone. Some were legends whose names will echo through generations. Others were rising talents whose brightest days were still ahead. But whether they stood at the top of Hollywood or carved out quiet careers, their departures left shadows that fans still feel today. Even in death, their work lives on. Every performance, every scene, every line they delivered remains a piece of them that time cannot erase. These stars may have left the world suddenly, but their presence continues each time we press play and remember who they were. Do you remember any final moments or forgotten names we should explore next? Share them in the comments. And if you love honoring the stories of legends gone too soon, make sure to subscribe to Gone But Iconic. Our journey continues.